Sorry, I just realized I've been speaking for the past 30 seconds without the microphone on. So let's try this again. Hello and welcome to the September Patreon Hangout stream. This is the stream that I promised that I would do this month to my Patreon backers. So this is brought to you by them. Um, this is just going to be a general sort of hangout just to catch up on what's been happening with me and check out what's been happening with you. As always, I can read you on the live chat, so you can see that here. I've got my laptop down here. At any point in time, if you want to say something, just pop into the live chat and I will try to get around to saying it. But I suppose I should give you an update on what's been happening. As you may or may not know, I've put the channel on hiatus for now because I'm working on my university thesis. So I've actually been a little bit out of it as far as I guess the main content of the channel goes. I haven't been thinking too much these days about headphones or audio or anything like that. And it honestly has been a bit of a relief for me. Just because I know it doesn't sound like something that should be stressful, but there's a great deal of behind the scenes stuff and thinking that goes behind the YouTube channel, and also just a fair amount of constant distraction from like, oh, a new product's being released. Oh, maybe I should see if this is going to be interesting. So I've just been kind of keeping my head down and just you know keeping my toes in the water occasionally. But honestly, if you're up on your audio news or that kind of stuff, you probably are more up to date on it than I am at the moment because things really change very quickly. But yeah, it has been sort of relaxing. What I've been kind of doing apart from writing my thesis in the meantime is I'm still kind of doing various gadget things. One of the things that I never actually talked about, and I suppose I can talk about, um, what I can talk about during this hangout is actually this thingy here. I ended up getting an Apple Watch, and I never ended up actually doing any videos about it. Hang on just a moment. Can you guys hear that? Let me know if you can hear the window sounds coming through the window, and I'll turn that off. But otherwise, it gets a bit stuffy in this room. Yeah, so as far as the Apple Watch goes, I bought this thing because I previously had a Garmin. Well, I still do. Let me pull it out here. I had this Garmin fitness tracker, and I really, really liked this. Because the way the Garmin works is that you can get phone notifications, you can receive calls, and also it tracks your daily steps. So I was pretty good about maintaining a 10,000 average, not a 10,000 average, just like a 10,000 step goal every day. But over time, I got a little bit more, there were some limitations to this device. So in the end, I kind of wanted to get an Apple Watch because not because of any of the notifications or the messaging stuff or anything. I wasn't really super. I mean, obviously it does those things and they would be helpful. But the biggest thing I got it for was the fitness tracking, and that has actually been really really cool because the way the watch works is that it tracks three different fitness sort of goal. So it tracks. Let me bring up my phone and I can show you if I have put it down. I put my phone down somewhere so it tracks three different goals. It tracks uh, the amount of active calories that you burn in a day. So it's not actually a step goal. It tracks. Um, it estimates the amount of calories that you might be using based on any sort of brisk activity. So it measures when you're actually standing up and walking around, and it tries to get you to actually um, meet that minimum active time. It also tries to encourage you to do 30 minutes of activity a day, and it encourages you to, for each of 12 hours in a day, to stand up for like 1 or 2 minutes in that day. Um, And that's quite a bit more comprehensive than the fitness tracker that I was using before, the Garmin, and I've been really happy with that. The way it's been built in the interface, I wish I could bring my phone up, but I've just put it somewhere stupid. Um, it shows you your fitness goals in this little. You might have seen this interface actually. Let me try and bring it up. For some reason, the watch thinks that I've taken it off, so it's making me put the passcode back in. Let's see. So yeah, it does everything in these little rings. I've actually just spent the entire morning just sitting down, so I haven't actually done much activity at all, but it gives you like active calorie counts and that kind of thing. That's been really cool. It has a heart rate sensor as well, but honestly, the heart rate sensor on the Apple Watch and with most wrist-based sensors, it's not it's good for resting heart rate, and that's what it's really sort of designed to do. But if you want an active heart rate count, this is not going to be accurate, and it's not going to be accurate, especially if you're doing things like running or sprinting, because the way these kind of optical heart rate sensors work, if you didn't know, is that the way they work is that they flash light through your skin, and then it measures the amount of light that's reflected back. Now, when there's blood pumping through your veins, it actually reflects back a different amount of light. So if it flashes 100 times a second or something like that, 200 times a second, and it gets back slightly different amounts of light depending on the amount of blood going through your veins, it can use that to estimate your heart rate, which is really cool. The unfortunate thing about that sort of setup is that if there's any gap between your skin and the heart rate sensor, if there's any external light that comes in, it completely messes up the heart rate tracking. So basically, if you're running and your wrist is moving, no matter, unless you make it really tight and it's not comfortable at that point, and if you make it too tight, then it actually starts constricting blood flow, which is probably inaccurate as well. You end up with inaccurate readings, so it's not particularly helpful at sort of full tilt sort of exercise. So what's been cool is that I actually got a what I've been doing with that, I have this pair of wireless earphones called the Jabra Pulse. They have a heart rate sensor uh, at the bottom here, so when you put them in your ear, it measures your heart rate from the bottom of your just at the base there, and they're more comfortable than they look. They actually look quite large, but they're quite comfortable, and it gets you quite a stable, accurate reading. And the best thing about having heart rate data is then you can actually make a really good comparison between different sorts of exercise and the actual intensity of that exercise. So I can know that, for instance, if I go sprinting, um, rather than saying, "Oh, I want to sprint for 6 minutes today," or "I want to blah blah blah," I can say I want to sprint at enough of an intensity that I reach my maximum heart rate, which is say 190, 195 beats per minute, and you can compare things like saying, oh well, when I was doing this exercise before, I was peaking at a heart rate of blah blah blah, but now it's not as strenuous, so obviously it's not as intense. I can maybe take up the intensity, or I can maybe afford to um, go a little harder, that kind of thing. So I don't know. It's not going to be for everyone. It's a really sort of geeky kind of thing. As far as exercise goes, the pure sort of geeky mechanics of it are really sort of appealing, um, sort of appealing to me. I don't know if any of you, let me know in the live chat, if you guys use any sort of fitness trackers or anything like that, or if I'm just a super super geeky sort of person. Let's just pop into the live chat again. Uh, no, you guys are chatting among yourselves, it seems. Oh, there's a question from Sesame Open, and he or she asks, how do you get the full sound out of a pair of earbuds or headphones? I have a Fio X1 with a pair of UE900s. And my answer to that question is you can pretty much get almost basically the full potential out of any earphone or headphone uh, with consumer level equipment. I'm not going to encourage you to go buy something extremely expensive. The only concern is, and in particular with something like the UE 900 or any balanced armature earphone, is that the impedance curve of that earphone can vary quite dramatically across frequency response. And the result is that on different amplifiers, some balanced armature earphones, typically balanced armature earphones, will sound very different depending on the different amplifier you have. And the difference in the sound is not due to the cost of the amplifier or anything like that. It's basically down to the output impedance of that amplifier because they interact in some way. Now, what that means is that generally speaking, you want to have an amplifier that has a low output impedance, and not every manufacturer quotes output impedance as a specification, but you want to choose an amplifier with a low output impedance, and that way you're probably going to be closer to what the designers of the earphone intended when they released this product to be used with smartphones and that kind of thing. Because generally, smartphones, iPods, portable media players, they generally have low output impedances because it means a better battery life. That said, you can have situations where you might prefer a higher output impedance with a given headphone or a given uh, amplifier, like with a given piece of audio equipment, because you might prefer the sound. So, for instance, with my pair of Audio Technica IMO2s, with the higher output impedance, you will end up with more high frequencies in the sound, and you may or may not prefer that. So there's not a golden rule. Again, it's not something to do with how much the amplifier costs. It's really an electrical issue with amplifiers, and that will be one of the biggest factors in the way a headphone or an earphone sounds, particularly if you are using a balanced armature earphone. Apart from that, I can't really say personally that I've heard a great deal of difference between various amplifiers that I could not attribute to something like output impedance. Not to say that some amplifiers have lower distortion specifications or lower or higher crossfeed or that kind of thing, but those differences seem quite subtle in comparison to the difference in sound you can hear when you have a very high output impedance versus very low output impedance. Hope that answers your question. It's a super, super, super complicated and geeky answer, but you know, that's the most comprehensive answer that I can provide for you. Um, okay, so what can I talk about next? Yeah, just in general, I just wanted to talk about. Okay, so here's a question for you in the live chat. What kind of music do you listen to when you do exercise? And the other question is, what kind of music do you listen to when you study or when you write or anything like that? Because what I've been doing, I've found that actually I end up listening to music when I exercise or when I go to the gym or anything that I would never ordinarily listen to outside of those situations. Like I listen to one of the songs that I've Swedish House Mafia is one uh, outfit that I really enjoy when I work out at the gym, or uh, Will I Am. There was some tracks that I've been listening to, like stuff that's been suggested to me on Spotify or Apple Music that I would ordinarily not listen to because I find dance music uh, or club music or that kind of thing, I find it really sort of boring. I find it boring because that music that you have to write so that people can dance to it, it has to be predictable. It has to have a certain rhythm, and there has to be choruses and things that you can return back to and stuff like that. Because one, it means it's easier for DJs to mix the different tracks together, and the other thing, it means it's easier to dance to because you can very quickly work out what's happening with the music and with the rhythm, etc., etc. Now, I find that sort of music really sort of boring in outside of those situations, but when you're doing exercise, I find it's the same kind of thing, that to have that really active, really driving sense of rhythm, it's really um, it's really nice to have that kind of constant beat. And for the same reason, the kind of sound that I would like out of an earphone at the gym or anything, like for instance, these I don't think sound very good. Uh, for the price, they cost I think over $200 when I bought them, and I would say they sound slightly worse than the Sennheiser CX 3.0, which is a much cheaper earphone, about $60-$70. It's a really warm, a really bassy kind of sound, and I wouldn't really enjoy listening to these outside of the times that I do use them for exercise. But when I am using them for exercise, it's the right kind of sound because I turn up the volume a little louder, um, and then I can kind of get into the zone with the music. And it's not going to ever be harsh or anything like that. It's just a sort of thumpy, bassy sort of sound. So yeah, that's my sort of opinion on music as far as working out goes. Our uh, Sesame Open says that for exercise he listens to Darude Dangstorm for 100 hours. You know what? Um, Maybe that might work for you. Maybe what will happen is every single time you hear Darude Sandstorm, your heart rate will go up as a result over time. You'll develop this association between working out and that particular song. Or maybe you could just play that song and you'd immediately drop down and start doing push-ups or something. That would be that would be cool. Um, the and he also says for study, he listens to classical and Slavonic dances. Uh, Nadim says EDM and dubstep at the gym and classical and ambient music at home. And yeah, what I can say, I'm actually exactly the same way. So when I'm listening to music for studying, I actually find it, or when I'm writing my thesis now, I find it much easier to listen to classical music or at least music without lyrics. And I find it's just because even having uh, vocals in a track, it might be because it activates some sort of speech processing center of the brain or something like that, but it's slightly distracting. I can't get into the flow of writing or anything like that unless it's music without vocals. So I've been listening to a lot of Yo-Yo Ma, sort of cello pieces, and I wish I had learnt the cello when I was a kid. I learned the violin, but I do prefer the sound of the cello. I've listened a lot of Bach, um, Tchaikovsky is one of my favorites. Sometimes there's some modern composers that I enjoy listening to, but they're a little more unsettling, I guess, to listen to while you're studying. But uh, yeah, it's nice. It's nice to find that song that puts you into the appropriate uh, state. And these days I try to really concentrate on creating the right environment for productivity. Uh, so it's sort of a real practical question as far as music goes, and it's a different relationship with music to have to be choosing music, I guess, for its utility value. Um, it's sort of fun that way. Now, Hunter Sandlin says that's the same reason I listen to black metal for studying. Um, I can't I can't quite say that I can differentiate between the different genres of metal, so I can't actually think off the top of my head what black metal is compared to say power metal or that kind of thing. I've listened to quite a bit of metal, but I've never really gotten into it. Uh, but I can imagine with certain genres of metal because they have a very rhythmic structure. Um, they they have a very, to me, most of the metal that I've heard is actually more about rhythm than anything else. And it's quite I want to say primal, but it's quite raw music in that sense. So I can imagine it being quite helpful study music for some people. And I don't personally like metal. I've tried listening to it. I never know what kind of mood that I'm supposed to be in when I listen to metal. It doesn't quite get there for me, but I can imagine it being pretty good uh, study music. I can imagine that working out. Anyway, let's move on to the next topic, I guess. Uh, I have I have pre-ordered one of the new iPhones. Um, and if you don't already, and you have a Twitter account, then follow me on Periscope because I probably will be uh, streaming the whole thing when I go to pick it up on the 25th in the morning. Now, Australia is one of the first launch countries for the phone, so I'll be able to stand. I won't have to queue in line or line up overnight. I do have a pickup reservation, so I'm just going to turn up at 8 a.m. in the morning, and hopefully it won't be too much of a drama to pick up the phone. I ordered the phone in the Pretty Princess Rose Pink Gold color, um, which is going to be awesome because it's just going to be sparkly and awesome. I've been trying to figure out which case to get along with it. Um, during when I get to the store, I'm probably going to have to choose between the turquoise or the pink case. Uh, I'm coming from an iPhone 5S, so it's going to be a big upgrade for me, just in terms of the sheer size of the screen, um, which I know I've complained about big screens in the past, but I'm just going to have to get over it because obviously Apple is not going to release um, a phone that's like 4 point. If I could find a 4.5 inches would be the perfect size for a phone for me. And I say that only because the original Moto G was 4.5 inches, and that was beautiful in the hand. And also it had that really nice curved shape to it. So the Moto G is a really, really uh, ergonomically sound phone design, I think. The iPhone 6S, the 6 at 4.7 inches, it just feels just a little bit too big, but there's nothing I can really do about it. 4 inch now is a little too small. So what can you do? Uh, I'm looking forward to the new camera. I'm looking forward to having a bigger screen, of course. Looking forward to the Force Touch inputs. Now, it may not actually seem like a that big a deal, but honestly, uh, from using Force Touch on the pressure sensitivity on the Apple Watch, it's quite an intuitive interface to just be able to push down to activate a thing, rather than holding your finger down for an extended period of time or other sort of interface tweaks or gestures. It's like how we have right click on the mouse, and we don't really have the equivalent of right click on a touch interface. And you'll notice that a lot of websites, when we were first developing touchscreens, they couldn't cope with touchscreens because on in terms of mouse gestures, we can have hover. You can hover over an icon and it'll bring down a submenu. And you can't have hover with touch interfaces because you can either interpret hover as you can touch something, you can stroke something, or you can hold your finger over it, and then if you hold it over for 5 seconds, then the phone registers, oh, you want to do something different. And that's kind of sort of hover, but it's not quite the same way that hover works, where instantaneously you move your mouse cursor over an icon and then you bring down a menu instantly. It's not something you can do with touch interfaces. So with something like Force Touch, you can have, and you're probably going to see it on a bunch of phones. I think Huawei has already developed a phone with and released it before Apple did with this pressure sensitivity. But the idea that you can press down and it will bring up a sort of temporary menu is very analogous to hover for a mouse. So you can imagine situations where we're finally going to get hover drop down menus or other sorts of interface gestures that can be actually helpful with pressure sensitivity now. Uh, Minecraft saved my life in the local chat says, why is it named a Patreon hangout? It's because this hangout was a hangout that I promised to do to my Patreon followers before I went declared that the channel was on a hiatus, so I still want to fulfill that pledge, and I probably will still keep doing them next month. No promises, but it's still named a Patreon hangout because number one, it was brought to you by the people who back me on Patreon, and number two is also because uh, the people on Patreon were allowed to send me messages for stuff that I could do on this show. I actually didn't receive any requests. That's no biggie. I'm happy just to sit here and chat with you peeps. Okay. Um. Hunter Sandlin asks, could I talk about what I'm in school for, or alternatively, what classes could you recommend someone interested in the kind of thing that your channel was about? Now, I'll sort of answer this in two parts, and the first part is to say that I am currently doing a PhD in media art, and the second part of that, my answer will be, my degree didn't really have anything to do with this YouTube channel in terms of uh, interests, in terms of related interests. So, for instance, I did learn how to use a camera through my degree. That was that was one thing that I did learn. I did learn about cameras and that kind of thing. I didn't learn anything about audio from my degree. Video editing, that kind of thing, was helpful. But honestly, I really wouldn't do a university degree or study something like that just so that you could make YouTube videos, or because you don't need that. That's just overkill. There's so much stuff that you can learn on the internet on how to do a lot of this stuff, and a lot of stuff you can't learn in university. A lot of the stuff that you can learn when you make a YouTube channel, you learn just by making it and by learning through trial and error and getting feedback from people. So I much recommend, if you want to do a university degree, uh, do something in like engineering or something, something. Don't do what I did, but do something. Of course, do what you want. Most importantly, do something that you will enjoy, because the stuff that you enjoy is probably the stuff that you're going to do best. But there was no special education that I got related as far as this YouTube channel goes. As far as being interested in headphones and audio, it's all just like um, research that I've done myself. Yes. Okay. So let's talk about the next topic that I have on this sheet, which is games that I've been playing in my spare time. And uh, if you are in the live chat, you can pop in at any time. So I recently got another thing that I got recently was a Wii U, which you can actually see here. Well, this is not the Wii U itself. This is the gamepad. The Wii U is. I don't know if you can actually see it on camera. No, you can't. It's actually just off the screen there. Um, and I got the Wii U as opposed to the PlayStation 4 because that would be my other choice. At the time that I got the Wii U, there wasn't actually any game that was sort of screaming out for me to get the PlayStation 4, but I really wanted to play Splatoon on the Wii U, so that's why I got it. Uh, and I can actually say I'm a bit weird in that the generation, like the only consoles that I've bought for this generation are the ones that everyone seems to hate. So I ended up getting the PS Vita, and I'm getting the Wii U, and those are honestly the two so maybe I'm like a console hipster or something like that. But um, I've really been quite happy with both of these purchases. As far as the Wii U goes, Splatoon is an awesome game. I don't actually play enough. Like, to me, not having a huge game library, I mean, obviously, the limitation with the Wii U game library is that the majority of the games are first party Nintendo titles. There's not a great deal of third party titles. Most of the third party developers have sort of abandoned the Wii U. Uh, but honestly, I don't actually play enough games, or I never actually finish enough games to be overly concerned about the size of the library because there's always, even on the Wii U, there's still a library of games that I will never get around to playing comprehensively because there's just already so much out there. Splatoon, I have Super Mario 3D World. The other reason why I got the Wii U is that I wanted a console that um, when I had friends over, you could just sit down and play something. You just get into it really easily. And I never got that experience with my PS3. I never really when I had the PlayStation 3, I bought most of the games that I got were not party games, or they weren't games that had cooperative play or anything like that. And split screen, I find split screen console games, local split screen games, are just not fun to play because you just have this tiny little screen. It's just bad. So I much prefer playing. And this is one thing that I think Nintendo has a really good strength in is that they still can make really fun party games, like really fun games that a bunch of people can just hop in and play. Like with Super Mario 3D World, it's a well-designed platformer that you can have up to four people playing on screen at the same time. I've had people come over, we play, and it's just you end up playing for hours, and you end up like sort of screaming at your friends for because there's random things that happen. Like for instance, uh, a lot of the game mechanics work is that the person with the gamepad controls certain parts of the game state. So for instance, they have to press on the screen to make a brick come out so that everyone else can jump on it. And a lot of times you get into a situation where someone will accidentally press the wrong brick, and then everyone else on the team will die, and then you blame the person with the gamepad. And I've had situations where I've had neighbors complain because we're just screaming at each other while we're playing. So I would say that Nintendo does party games really well, and they do, and they still can make, a lot of people say it's cutesy, sort of kiddie games or that kind of thing, but they're fun. Just basically, I find them fun games to play. So I've been playing that, and I just started playing Bayonetta, which is sort of a different sort of deal. Bayonetta, uh, if you haven't if you haven't heard of this game before, and let me know in the live chat if you have a Wii U or you played any of the games that I mentioned. Bayonetta and Bayonetta 2, because Bayonetta 2 is one of the few exclusives for the Wii U. This game was released a long time ago. I actually find this game I'm this Bayonetta combines um, two things that I'm not very good at. It combines fighting game timing mechanics, which I am not good at, and and a lot of things happening on the screen at the same time, which I am unfortunately not very. When too many things happen on the screen at the same time, I can actually find it quite difficult to read the game visually. And Bayonetta is a game that's entirely based around timing, so dodging enemy attacks, so you can activate a special slow motion mode, so you can attack things, blah blah blah. Things like combos is a very combo based game. I haven't played Devil May Cry, so I understand that they're similar in some ways. I'm enjoying the game, but I'm just finding it punishingly difficult. Like, I'm not good at it. I will like play for 20 minutes and I'll get through one combat encounter in which I die 3 or 4 times and I get up to the next one. I'm playing at the normal difficulty, and apparently normal in this game is much harder than other games. But I could probably switch to the easier difficulty, but I've been told you can't unlock certain things if you play on easy, blah blah blah. I don't know. It's fun. Um, Sort of the other thing about Bayonetta, probably what's most famous about it, is that the whole point is the main character, who's a very assertive, very confident lady, and there's all sorts of debate about that kind of thing. But uh, the one of the mechanics, which I actually didn't think was, well, now that I played the game, it doesn't actually seem as important as it did when I first heard about it. Is that when her outfit is made out of her hair, and then when she does combos, she uses her hair to attack. So the bigger the combo, the less like actual parts of her body are covered. But it actually it actually doesn't actually doesn't end up being. I mean, obviously it's a bit sort of pervy, I would say. But it actually doesn't end up being a huge focus of the game. Now, obviously, there's a lot of uh, sexualization of her character, and it's obviously like her character is incredibly full on in those respects, but at the same time, the rest of the game is also incredibly kooky and weird. There's just weird stuff going on in the game. You had these weird angels and demons and uh, this sort of noir kind of aesthetic to the game. Everything is over the top. And so I don't know, like it sort of reminds me of Lollipop Chainsaw, which was another game that was sort of really, I guess, criticized by some people for the same sort of thing. I found Lollipop Chainsaw. I actually really enjoyed Lollipop Chainsaw because I found it quite tongue in cheek and that kind of thing. But uh, that was another game that was very similar. That's probably the most similar game I've played to Bayonetta in terms of the mechanics. And I'll just dip back into here. Hunter Sandlin asks, "Do you listen to Death Grips?" I have had uh, a Death Grips album, but I haven't actually really gotten into it. Um, yeah, I have had. Yeah, so once I finish Bayonetta, I'm gonna play Bayonetta 2. Um, and I suppose I should talk a bit about the PS Vita as well. And again, if you are in the live chat and you have a PS Vita or anything like that, just let me know. Right now, I've been playing. Bring it up. I've been playing a game at the moment. I don't know if you can see this. I've been playing Steins Gate, which is a visual novel about time travel, and it has a lot of basically this. The PS Vita is the console that you get if you like anime and or you are a huge weeb, because there's at least in Australia, there's not many other games being made available for it, except for a lot of um, very very anime. I can't think of a better way to put it, but just like anime games. So uh, games with a lot of references to otaku or Japanese culture, which I get a real kick out of. Like I'm not as much of a weeb as I used to be, but I still have that kind of weeby uh, uh, personality lurking beneath the well-adjusted normal personality that you see here today. Uh, but a lot of really awesome games on the Vita if you are into anime. More than enough, actually, I would say, if you are interested, if you do watch Japanese cartoons or anything, more than enough to buy the console. You will be happy with it. I can tell you right now. Like, even if you think there's, okay, that was a motorcycle or something. Even if you are concerned about the the library of games on the Vita, there are many, many more games than you will ever complete. Now, there's probably like a bunch of games that aren't very good. Steins Gate has been really cool. I can really recommend Steins Gate. Now, it's weird though. It's a visual novel, which means it's a lot of reading, it's a lot of text, but it's quite amusing. I can't actually figure out if I've made any choices in the game though, because apparently there are branching paths in the game, and apart from you occasionally get text messages in the game, and you can choose what to reply to them. But apart from that, I can't find any other choices in the game. Like I've been playing for many hours now, and the game hasn't actually presented me with a specific choice apart from the text messages. So I don't know if that's actually the branching narrative mechanism in this game, and if it is, that's really cool. But it's just sort of confusing that way. I haven't played any visual novel like that. Other games I can recommend on the Vita are Danganronpa, which is a sort of murder mystery battle royale kind of, uh, also sort of a visual novel game, but a lot of puzzles and that kind of thing. Really, really awesome. Danganronpa, Persona 4 Golden, which is the definitive version of the game. It was originally released on PS2, and then there was a remake with an extended ending that was made for PS Vita, and that's the only platform that it is available on. Persona 4 Golden was the game that I bought the console for. Even if that was the only game I played on the Vita, I would have been happy to pay the basically $200 I paid for the console just to play that game, because Persona 4 Golden is one of my favorite games of all time. Um, uh, I was playing Atelier Rorona. You know, a lot of anime games. Like, there's a lot of indie games on the Vita as well. And what's cool about those is that there's a lot of games that you can just sit down and play for 15 minutes on the train or something, and you can put down. You don't have to get too involved in them. I don't like playing games on a smartphone. I don't like playing games on a touchscreen because I find without physical controls, you just end up with either horrible pay to play games, or you end up with like horribly simplistic, addictive game mechanic sort of games. I don't really enjoy most phone games. I much prefer to have physical analog sticks and buttons and that kind of thing. So the Vita has been uh, good that way. Uh, Lewis M says BioWare narratives though on the PS3 and Xbox if you're not on PC. Now, gotta say I do like BioWare narratives. I think they do really good writing. Uh, I'm actually prefer BioWare games over, say, Bethesda games in terms of RPGs, because I think BioWare does a better job of writing. One of the most recent BioWare games that I've played is actually the Old Republic Star Wars MMO. And I'm not really much of a Star Wars geek. I don't really know that much about the series, but I was playing with a friend. Uh, One of the best written MMOs that I've played, because it actually gives you a sense that you are making important sort of decisions in the game world, even though it is an MMO and you can't really affect the game state that much. It is a really cool. They write games well. My only thing that I can say about a lot of BioWare games these days, and a lot of RPGs, and I haven't played. I used to really, really love RPGs. These days, I find it hard to commit that amount of time. Like, a lot of these RPGs are coming out with like, say, 100 hours of content on it, and I'm not going to play 100 hours. Even if I go, 100 hours, I don't care. Honestly, I would actually prefer games to be, I think, 10 or 20 hours. If I can get an experience, a full experience on 10 or 20 hours, I'm happy. Now that said, I did play Persona 4 Golden for many, many more hours than that. I've probably spent about 30 hours on the game, and I'm looking forward to actually replaying that in the New Game Plus mode at some point when I get around to it. But these days, because I have less time, I guess, uh, I I feel like I want to get that whole sort of fulfilling experience of the game arc from beginning to end. And these days, I want to finish games because uh, we all have that problem where you have a giant Steam library full of like 100 games that you haven't played and you don't finish any of them. I try to resist buying new games now because I haven't finished all these games that I already have. So these days I just try to buy a game. I've already paid money for it and I want to finish it and get that complete experience. I don't know if that's the same for you, but for me, it's like that. Grouchader says that mobile games are basically glorified Skinner boxes. Now, a Skinner box, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but a Skinner box is it's a uh, B.F. Skinner was a psychologist, and he invented these sort of games. These. This is the thing. I thought Skinner boxes were electrified boxes that would give you a shock for bad behavior, but I don't know if they also dispensed food pellets or something else for good behavior. My computer's turned off. Okay. I don't know if they actually dispense treats for good behavior, but basically, a lot of games these days are based around um very, very, very basic risk reward mechanisms that give you a reward for doing some inane or stupid task that really doesn't require any sort of skill or anything. And a lot of them aren't even risk reward mechanisms, they're just reward mechanisms. So they're they're designed to be addictive in some senses. So they're things like time gates to stop you from progressing through the game unless you pay money, or that you can't unlock content, or blah blah blah. And I hate it. I hate the games, a lot of the mobile games that are being made now, and I think that they're really, really. I actually think that they're harmful for certain kinds of people. You hear about people who spend a lot of money on Angry Birds or something. And Angry Birds is slightly different. I actually haven't played Angry Birds, but I understand that there's at least a little degree of skill to it. Some games that are being released now have just nothing. They're just games that track a certain number of variables, and you do things that slowly make the variables go, and there's pretty graphics and then blah blah blah. In other words, they're slot machines. They're basically the modern day equivalent that we have today of a slot machine, where you put in a dollar, you pull a lever, and see how the things line up, and then you keep putting in money to see if you get something out of it. And the thing is that we like, at least in Australia, I don't know how it works in the United States, but we regulate slot machines in Australia. We regulate the payoffs for them. We regulate certain things so that people can't have their lives destroyed by slot machines, because it's possible for some people to do that. But we don't regulate games. And I'm not saying that we should, but there is a concern that if you start making games that do resemble, they're not skill based. They actually start to resemble slot machines in terms of just being chance based games or lotteries. There is a danger there. I think it is possible to make games that are harmful to people. But that's, my little rant. Uh, that's my little rant on that sort of topic. Um, what was I saying? Yeah, get a Vita if you like. Get a Vita if you like anime, or if you like little indie games. It's actually a really great console. So, the other thing I should comment on is that the Wii U gamepad, I mean, it's actually lighter than you would expect. The really funny thing about this gamepad is that it's actually made a lot of sense to me, just in terms of what they were trying to do with the game mechanics. And also, it's nice that I can sit down in bed at night. I don't have to turn the TV on, because I have this TV in my room that's positioned in such a way that it's incredibly uncomfortable for me to actually use it, because there's no position in which I can sit in the room that I can comfortably watch the TV. I didn't put the TV there; it's not my choice. It came with this little studio apartment, because this is student housing. It's not comfortable, but I can sit there and play this like a giant handheld in bed, because you got the screen and I can play Bayonetta on this screen. It's obviously it's not like a handheld in that the battery life is not going to be as good as any sort of real handheld like a PS Vita, but you have something where the processing is all handled by the console itself, and then it's uh, beaming straight to the gamepad. And what's interesting is that they've done tests, and the latency on the gamepad, the connection between the gamepad and the Wii U, even though it's wireless, is actually faster than even a lot of TVs, which introduce input delay because of various processing functions on the TV. So that's really cool. Um, I've been having fun with that, so that's sort of a advantage, I guess, of the Wii U's concepts. It's really, like Lewis M says, man, that thing looks hella clunky. It is really chunky. It looks sort of clunky, um, but it actually makes a lot more sense in the hand. I also had the Pro controller. I gotta say, Wii controllers are really expensive, but I've got the Pro controller, which is more of traditional console sort of controller. That feels much better in the hand. Um, but I can't actually complain that much about the Wii U. Whew. Okay, so we're coming up to close to an hour now. What I'm gonna do now is I'm just gonna throw it wide open to the open chat for the next 10 or 15 minutes, just to wrap this up. I hope you have been enjoying this little catch up. We've jumped between all sorts of topics today. as I said, I've been taking a break from audio, so there's not actually a great deal of audio stuff that I can talk about. And to be honest, I've been a little, prior to the hiatus, I had gotten a little exhausted by the audio side of things. So my plan when the channel does come back from hiatus, and that will, I'll tell you now, if you're watching now, that will take more than a couple of months for that to happen. But when it does, and I'll probably have some hangouts here and there between then, when it does, you should expect the channel to be quite different in terms of form, in terms of content. I'd like to do something probably even a little closer to what we're doing right now in terms of having a live chat, in terms of just a more casual format that I can sit and just talk about things with an audience directly, because I'd say it's a little easier for me to do that. It's a little more engaging, I think, for you to watch that. Uh, you do have that trade-off where people don't necessarily have that amount of time to watch these 1 hour hangouts or stuff like that, and I'm cognizant of that limitation. But I personally am a big fan of podcasts, for instance, and I'd like to make content that was more that was more in line with that kind of idea. Anyway, yeah, that's the plan when I come back. And if you have any suggestions or anything, uh, please, please, please let me know. Now let's go into the live chat now. So I just pour myself a bit more water. My throat's kind of dying a little there. Okay, so yeah, one of the things that's popping up in the chat right now is about ad blockers. Uh, and ad blockers, it's a thing that I've spoken about before. And obviously I come from a very different perspective than a lot of people on the internet because I make content on the internet, and I would have had like I'll basically tell you, I was running ad blockers, started making my YouTube channel, and then I uninstalled all the ad blockers that I use, um, because I realized that there is there is a great deal of effort that goes behind even doing stuff that looks quite simple. Even things like gaming, let's plays, all that kind of thing. Uh, we've created a situation now on the internet where, unfortunately, because uh, people are not willing or not used to, not accustomed to spending money for content anymore. We generally don't like spending money from content for specific bits of content. So I guess that was the lasting legacy of things like Kazaa and BitTorrent and everything like that, was it demonstrated that um, I guess people obviously want things to be easy, and you can have successful platforms like Netflix or that kind of thing. But in the end, it's very hard to compete with free, and people are very happy to pay nothing or pay very little for content without actually thinking about the amount of uh, money it would take to make that content. Now, if you think about Netflix, for instance, yeah, $10 is great. You get a lot of access to content. But let's compare that to, let's imagine if Netflix was just comprehensive. So instead of the $10, um, the maybe the 10 or 20 or $30 you would have spent on DVDs or things like that that go towards one single production, you're paying $10 for a catalog of thousands and thousands of movies, and there's no way that those economics will work out in the long term. So, like, if that was the only income stream for after the box office, we're talking about after sales, like if Netflix replaced DVD sales and those kind of things entirely, it would not be sustainable because suddenly you're paying $10 to get the same amount of content that you were getting previously, where you would have to pay per unit of content. Now, it's fair enough. People are not going to pay. It exists. People have made those deals. The movie companies have made those deals. A lot of Netflix sales are obviously not going to cannibalize DVD sales where you get special features and that kind of things. There's like die hard kind of collectors. but also Netflix will cannibalize people who would previously download movies without paying a single cent. So that's kind of good in that way. So to cope with that, the other model that we have besides subscription models is the ad model, where you don't pay any money, but you want to watch a few ads, and then you get a few very small amount of money per ad. Occasionally, an ad will come up, and it'll be kind of relevant to you, and maybe you'll click it or something like that. Very rarely. I very rarely click internet ads. I think most people very rarely click internet ads, and I think that's actually a problem with that's Google's fault or the ad server's fault, because they can't seem to deliver ads that are compelling or engaging to people. And obviously there are privacy concerns, because if you want ads that are targeted to you, that are more relevant to you, then obviously you have to give more information about yourself to the blah 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 blah. So there's a whole amount of complexity there, but it simply boils down to, if you block ads, you are removing the one of the few sources of revenue that people can get um, for the stuff that they do online, for the content that they make. Now, obviously, some content doesn't seem like, I don't want to pay for this, but and another thing is that people go, well, yeah, well then why don't we, I want to pay the director directly. So we have things like Patreon, and that's why I set up my Patreon account. But you can't imagine a scenario where basically for every single different media property, for every show that you enjoy, for everything, you have a subscription. Um, because that inevitably will mean that either you can't have like a million different subscriptions for a million different shows. It would just be ridiculous. So you're gonna have to have bundles. You're gonna have bundled subscriptions, networks of subscriptions. You get a subscription, you get a bunch of content that you like and you don't like, and people already hate that, like about cable. And I don't get cable. I've never had cable, but I do know, from the South Park kind of thing, people don't want to pay for stuff that they don't want to watch. But the tricky thing is that if you don't pay for stuff that you don't want to watch, there won't be enough money to go around to make the stuff, right? Like, because people won't sign up to 100 different subscriptions. I'm not going to sign up to Netflix and then sign up to Netflix, two other competitors in Australia, and then I'm not going to sign up to HBO Go, and I'm going to sign up to a bunch of different things. I'm not going to do that, right? So the other model that we have that seems to have worked in the past, and it's starting to not work now, is the ad supported model. Now, obviously, there's been a lot of ads that are irritating, and you get this problem because if you don't make an ad irritating, if you don't make it jump out at the user doesn't pay attention. So you have to strike that balance, because otherwise you end up with 100 ads that like will make people just go ugh, and I'll just block all ads, right? It's a sort of all or nothing proposition. So it's a difficult thing. I understand why people want to block ads. We see so many ads every day, like every 10 seconds or something, we see an ad. At the same time, you have to recognize that it does take time and effort and money and resources to make content. And if you are blocking ads and you aren't in any other way paying, like, no one deserves free entertainment. You don't have a right. It's not a human right to be entertained, right? There's no like, you can say the ads are inconvenient, you don't like them, but at the same time, I do think it is in some senses immoral to say that, well, I will enjoy this entertainment, but I won't do anything that will contribute towards its sustainability. And in the end, we're just talking about sustainability here. Uh, and because it's a matter of choice, it's no longer a matter of, like, we won't really be able to compel people to behave in a certain way with police or something like that. We can't compel people not to use ad blockers, or we have to either attract them, or we have to appeal to a sense of, um, basically a sense of wanting to support people uh, by not using ad blockers, or by selectively unblocking the creators that you like, and that kind of thing. It's a very difficult topic, and as you can see, I've thought a fair bit about it as someone who is on both sides of the question. Uh, but hopefully, like, that is sort of interesting, or it is is something that makes you think about this. I've just completely gone on a rant for the past 20 or 30 minutes about that. Uh, okay, so uh, Hunter actually says, he says we're seeing more and more embedded ads, which I think is a good thing. There's actually something that's very worrying now that's occurring because of ad blocking. What you're seeing two trends because of ad blocking and in response to ad blocking. One is ads that are, we're seeing applications more and more want to push people into walled gardens. So Facebook can't stop you from blocking it. Like YouTube or Google or whatever, they can't stop you from blocking ads in the browser. But they can stop you from blocking ads from within the Facebook app or within a YouTube application or something like that. You can't block those ads. So what the companies now will want to do is push people more and more towards using the package applications that they use so that you can't block ads in them. And we're seeing, as a result, you're going to get increasingly, as time goes on, the internet is going to be less and less open. You're going to move away from the browser www model, more towards these kind of walled siloed applications where the the company has complete control over how the content is served to you. And that's a result of ad blocking. And obviously, there are advantages with the application model. Like, I much prefer logging in on Facebook Messenger on a little self-contained app than I do going over onto a browser. But that's where we're heading towards, right? That's a thing that you have to be aware of with the ad blocking model. The other thing we're seeing is a different type of advertising called native advertising. You may have heard this, native advertising or advertorial. And that means that instead of having ads run through, like before the content, you make the content the ad. So you're going to see things like, particularly in makeup tutorials, particularly things like technology reviews, you're going to see more and more companies going, we want to sponsor people. We want to sponsor creators. We want to get them to feature our products. Now, of course, there are disclosure standards. There are things that, like, minimum in terms of regulation that you're supposed to disclose. If I got a product and I've been paid to talk about the product, or I've been provided free products or something, I have to disclose that as part of the content. But very often you'll see that there are people who don't do that, or who don't do it clearly, or who don't disclose things um, in a way that lets the viewer know that quite clearly what's the border between personal opinion and opinion that has been paid for by the company that is sponsoring that. And that's something that obviously I've been concerned about. Like, I stopped taking review units on my channel because I was concerned about the relationship between review units and producing unbiased opinion. And as advertising, as the advertising model becomes less and less effective, you're going to see increasingly blurred lines between content and advertorial. Uh, and you can see a lot of places where that is a real concern for people. That's constantly that the ethical implications of that. But the thing is, in the end, people want to have their cake and eat it too. Uh, they want to have this sort of uh, independence from content creators. They want content creators to be independent and not influenced by money. But in order to have independence, you have to have financial independence. The stuff has to be sustainable. The stuff you do has to be sustainable. It has to be independent. And in order for that, you have to get money from somewhere. The money has to come from somewhere. That's just it. Like, a lot of people go, "Oh, well, don't start YouTube, or don't do these things if you want to make money. Then just don't do them." And then you go, "Well, then are you happy to see the kind of diversity of content that we have uh, shrivel, or are you happy to see that the result is that you'll have less content because people simply can't do things for free? It's not a matter of because they're doing it for the money, but the simple thing is that most things cost money to do. Like, even in terms of buying cameras or having bandwidth for the internet or something, most things cost money to produce on the internet. And one of the things that I think is sort of a bad relationship I think we have with money is that we tend to think, well, if people do things for money, they're selling out and they aren't, passionate about what they do. And I find that a really it's a really false argument because I would challenge you to go to, for instance, companies like Apple or Google or Microsoft, where the people are paid a great deal, and you think that those people are not completely passionate and consumed in what they do, and they don't care about doing a good job. They're only doing it for the money. Now, of course, part of the reason is that they're doing it for the money. But in the end, if they weren't paid that amount, they'd be paid by someone else who would pay them just as much, if not more, to get the talent and the skills and the passion that they have. So the money is just something that is a recognition of their sort of ability, right? It's not necessarily, oh, they're selling out. And in the same sense we have on for content creators or that kind of thing, money is one of those metrics apart from like views or subscribers or anything like that. You do like, I can tell you, I felt a sense of pride when I first got my first paycheck from Google, because Google does pay me money for the content. Not a great deal of money, you know, just enough to maybe get like the price of lunch every day covered uh, by these videos. And certainly it's going to be easier for me to 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 have a bit more discretionary spending on like gadgets and stuff that I otherwise wouldn't. But it's not enough to make a career out of, at least at the moment. Um, but I can tell you, I did feel a sense of pride when I got my first paycheck, because I felt like, yes, I had done the thing that people talk about. I had started making money on the internet, and that's really kind of crazy. But you know, that's just my view on it after having set up this YouTube channel and blah 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 blah. Um, yeah. Okay. So I will I will wrap it up now. Sorry, that probably got a little heavy towards the end, but I will wrap things up now. Once again, thank you. If you joined in, it was a real pleasure to chat with you and to sort of catch up, because I haven't done anything like this in a while, so it's been a nice change. Uh, I will, if you don't already, follow me on Facebook at facebook.com/Lachlan likes a thing, or on Twitter at Lock likes a thing. As I said, if you follow me on Periscope, I will be live streaming my purchase of the iPhone that's coming up in 4 days. Um, so keep an eye out for that. And also, you'll know about these kind of events previous to these kind of live hangouts if you follow me on Facebook and Twitter. I know for a lot of my Patreon subscribers in particular, Patreon doesn't have a very good notification system for these kinds of things. You're much better off. I do send out emails and that kind of thing, but sorry. But it is probably easier if you want to follow me on Facebook or Twitter. You can see that stuff come up before it does. Anyway, I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you very much for joining me for this live hangout, and see you later.